Hi, this is Ed Rising, and welcome back to Ed's Pop-O-Matic Podcast, a retro pop culture podcast where everything retro beats a new if you keep it in your heart. Haven't had a show in quite a while, but we're getting back with a new season of shows, and so I hope that you'll be coming back for lots more fun. Today, we are going to be discussing the new version of the Beatles' Let It Be movie, originally from 1970. It has now been restored and now airing on Disney Plus. I have three guests with me that I'm very thrilled to have with me for the very first time in history, well, in Pop-O-Matic history. We have my friend Mark Zutkoff. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And then we have two returning guests, my friends Jan Mitchell
Hi, everybody. Hi, Ed.
and
Thanks for having me back.
and Fred Velez, my good buddy from the
Everybody,
Plastic EP days.
yes,
So,
peace and love, peace and love.
So, what we'd like to do is we'd like to talk about the Let It Be film that was directed by Michael Lindsay Hogg, released in 1970, April of 1970. And I'd like to ask each of you, starting with you, Mark, your impressions on and your reminiscences on that film when you saw it way back when.
Well, in 1970, I am not absolutely certain if I was able to see the film that year because it was a very turbulent year in my life. I did get the album. I also got the McCartney album at that time. I'd been looking forward to seeing it, but my recollection is that I didn't get to see it then. It was in 1973 that I'm certain I saw it because a local theater ran all five, and I count five, Beatles films, one after another over a week in, I believe, the summertime. And I wound up going to this. And in fact, I brought my cassette recorder and recorded the audio and wound up listening to the audio of that for years before I even got to see it again after that. I loved the film when it first came out. At that point, I didn't know that much about the history. And for instance, when they started playing Maxwell's Silver Hammer, I'm thinking, why are they doing Maxwell's Silver Hammer as if they're just learning it when it had been released on Abbey Road a little while back? I mean, that's kind of strange. As I say, I didn't completely know the history. I was a dumb kid sometimes.
Weren't we all?
I'm not going to mention any names. Anyway, I just loved watching the Beatles do their work. I didn't get the sense at that point that there was that much animosity between them. And of course, the rooftop concert was just magnificent.
Yeah.
Then in the 80s, I got the film on VHS, got to rent the film on VHS and made a copy of it and wound up watching that over the years. So a lot of people who have been reviewing the remastered Let It Be have said that they haven't seen it since 1970. Well, I saw it a lot of times because I saw it in 73, then I saw it in 82 or whatever it was when the VHS came out. And then over the years, I've gotten various downloadable copies of it and gotten to see it again with various improvements, or in most cases, not improvements. But now we finally get to see the real thing.
Very cool. And Fred, where were you back then for the original film?
Well, I remember way back when I did see the movie in 1970 when it opened on Broadway in a theater on Broadway, and this was shortly after the announcement that Paul had left the Beatles. So that was a big shock to all the Beatle fans. So going into the movie, I went with my brother, and going into the movie, I felt this is probably going to be the last time I'll ever see Paul with the Beatles. But we didn't know what was going to happen to the Beatles after that.
Yeah.
I mean, there were rumors that they were going to go on with Klaus Vormann taking over, but that never happened. Even though if you go to the Ringo album and I'm the Greatest, you got John, George, and Ringo and Klaus Vormann on that recording. So it sort of happened.
And
Yeah.
Billy Preston.
And Billy Preston.
And Billy
exactly.
Preston too. Right.
So anyway, I remember seeing the movie. I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't sure it was going to be something like Hard Day's Night or Help, but seeing it the way it was seeing them in rehearsals, seeing them doing the songs, seeing how much there was. The fun parts were when they showed them singing and performing together, especially the rooftop scene, which is incredible.
Sure.
And I remember that I liked the movie, but I was sad because it looked like because Paul had left the Beatles, and it looked like the Beatles were going to be gone at that point, which sadly it had happened. And I've seen the movie. I hadn't seen the movie again until the Beatle conventions in 1974 when he started showing them there, and the reaction of the crowds were great because they cheered when they had the Beatles performing, when they were joking. They booed when Yoko was on the screen, which wasn't fair, but that's the way it was back then.
Yeah.
And everyone loved the Rooftop. And then in 1980s is when the VHS came out, and I got a copy of that, which I sold a long time ago. But I got a copy of the VHS, so I got to see the movie again. And of course, the quality was lousy, but we got to see the movie. And it was 2 years later that I got a bootleg version of the movie from the VHS. No, actually, I think the bootleg is from the video disc that came out in
That's
the early
right.
80s
It was a video
also.
disc. Right.
So that came out.
Yeah, it was the RCA video disc, I believe, not
Right.
the laser disc.
Right. I think it was on Laserdisc too.
Right.
It was both on RCA and on Laserdisc because I have
That's
it here.
possible.
Magnetic video down here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So
It's cool.
and I do like the movie. it just has a sadness to it because of the circumstances when it came out at the time.
Right.
That
Right.
all dissipated with the release of the Peter Jackson Get Back documentary.
Right.
So
Right.
so and it put everything into perspective regarding the
Sure.
Let It Be movie.
Right. We'll
And
get to that a little bit later on. Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Right on. Jan, how was your appreciation of the film back then?
Well, I never saw the film back then, true confession. My life was very different then. I was pursuing a career as an investigator in New York City. So I was just all consumed by that. But I remember I did hear, that Paul had left the Beatles, which that just did not compute with me how he could leave the Beatles and how you could break up the Beatles just was completely mind-boggling because I had been there from the very beginning.
Right.
And as far as I was concerned, the Beatles were the band that would always be together. How could there be anything to break them apart? So I was not able to really learn anything more because I was all consumed with my career. But to make up for that, when they get back to Let It Be, a huge display at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, where I now live, I went and I saw that 3 times. That was just magnificent. Oh my gosh, floor to ceiling, rooftop interviews. It was just the most enthralling, like whatever happened a long time ago, it really never mattered when you saw the Get Back to Let It Be. People just sat. I mean, we were just watching. People were totally enthralled. People were in tears. The love for the Beatles never goes away. They are a forever group of people.
Right.
No matter what happens, no matter what the troubles are, what the problems are, that's their creative process.
Right.
And that happens to every group of people, no matter what type of relationship you're in.
Right.
And all the creativity. I mean, they were more creative than any other musical group, the 4 of them together. I mean, the music that they wrote John and Paul, and then George, each one, and Ringo, each one had an incredible, unique gift. And nothing could really, as far as in my heart, nothing will ever break them up. I love everything. So
Yeah.
I saw the latest Get Back on Disney Plus,
Mhm.
and it was just, I don't know, for me, it was just a wonderful experience to be sitting there. I'm in the audience with an incredible view, no voice, but a view
Yeah.
to what's happening, all the things that are going on between them.
Now,
And
was the Get Back to Let It Be similar, a version of a cut of the Peter Jackson version of Get Back, or was that a different production altogether?
well, what they had at the Rock Hall,
Yeah.
the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it was mainly rooftop.
Okay.
They really expanded. They had a lot more rooftop shots at the Rock Hall.
Hmm.
So, and it lasted a long time. It was just ongoing. They
Yeah.
had three rooms filled with it. So you were completely inundated by
Wow.
it. But just watching the one that just came out on Disney Plus, I mean, I just couldn't believe that we had access to all the ups and downs and the conversations that they had amongst each other. The disagreements, the coming together, the smiling, the happiness. You could see the love was there no
Yeah.
matter what.
Right.
And one of the things that truly moved me was when Ringo and Paul were creating Octopus's Garden. That just delighted me beyond no end. It was just the sweetest thing. I just love that so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta say, Ringo comes across as definitely the glue between the four of them. He has that fun bit with George Harrison when he's working on I guess he's also working on Octopus's Garden with
Yeah.
George, right? Because he's coming up with some different lyrics or whatever. And of course he works on it with Paul as well. But yeah, I mean it's a great deal of fun watching
But you know
Ringo.
what? That's the ultimate job of the drummer, to keep the beat going no matter what's happening and to be there for everything that's going on around with everybody else. That's the job of the drummer. And
Yeah,
he does that so well.
he does.
Hmm.
Well, my recollection of it is that when I was I was only 9 years old in 1970, so I really wasn't going out to see the Beatles movie. It didn't happen until I guess sometime around 78, maybe even 79, when the film would be shown in one of the late night or midnight showings in theaters in Long Island,
Mm.
maybe even in the city. And my friends and I, we would go and we would enjoy it, and by then we knew all the backstory with the, the arguing and the various disputes and all that drama. And unfortunately, that overshadows so much of what occurs in the film, because you're thinking, well, is he really pissed off? He doesn't want to play this or not? Or what is the way he's looking at him there? How is he looking at him there? Is he really smiling? Or what does that really mean? And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's a big part of that of the film, and even the film that was just put out. I found myself going back to that same negative feelings that I had years ago. And I did see that a Fest for Beatles fans, or Beatles Fest or whatever it was called back in the day. But I did think the new version of it looked really good. I mean, it sounded really good. And I was really impressed with just the fun of them putting songs together.
Hmm.
Now,
Yeah, you can really see
I
that
got a
creative
feeling in
process.
particular, just wow.
Creative process to be able to be there as a witness to the creative process of the Beatles, of any band ever, the Beatles. So it's a privilege really to have seen this. I loved it.
It's cool. Fred, any thoughts on the new film? Any new thoughts that came out of it? Anything you saw in it that was different this time than the last time?
Oh, well, first I was blown away by the quality of the film, both the the look of it and the sound of it was incredible. I mean, you got to hear little sounds they didn't really notice before in the bootleg versions. But just to say about the bootlegs, they were always very dark and very grainy and stuff like that. But Peter Jackson did a great job of cleaning up the movie. And I'm glad they kept it at the original aspect ratio, because it was originally filmed in 16 millimeter and then later blown up to fill a wide screen. And because of the wide screen, you missed little bits that were on the sides. But in the new version, which is now the proper ratio, you get to see bits that you didn't really see before. Like originally in the Rooftop, Ringo was usually cut off. When you had the John, Paul, and George all together, Ringo is always like, you can just see the drums, but you don't see Ringo.
Yeah.
Now in the new version, you see Ringo right in the shot.
Yeah.
There was another thing that someone pointed out during when George is doing I Me Mine for Ringo, and John and Yoko are waltzing to it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and at the very end, they do a little bow, and you see they're bowing to George, and George is smiling. In the original widescreen, George is cut out, so you never see George in that part. But now you do see him, and George is smiling because he liked their little dance.
And you can see that interaction a little bit more clearer by having that particular shot. That's great.
Right. So you got to see a bit more of what you missed in the widescreen version. And the sound, like I said, was incredible. And you get a lot of Mal Evans in there. You see how prevalent he was in there. And you see Michael Lindsay Hogg in the movie, and you see George Martin.
I was just going to say, yep. When Ringo and George were working on Octopus's Garden, they were happy and smiling. And then George Martin comes in, and he's smiling and happy with them as well. And that was so nice to see.
Yeah.
And then you had Billy Preston, who was a breath of fresh air.
He was always fun.
I'm glad
there's a sunshine there.
Yeah, I'm glad in the Get Back documentary you get more Billy Preston, especially when he first comes to the sessions. In the movie, the original Let It Be, he's there, and there's no explanation of why he's there. But now in Get Back, you get that explanation.
Mark, let me get back to you. I'm sorry,
I just want to say, I'm sorry, excuse me, but I just want to make a comment about Billy Preston. At the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame display, they showed a lot of Billy Preston, which I love because he's fabulous. But in the Disney Plus version, you hardly saw him at all. And I was kind of confused by that because he was quite prevalent on the rooftop.
Well, as Fred said, he was very. If you see the Get Back with Peter Jackson version, you see a lot more of him coming into the sessions and all that. And then eventually, even in the Rooftop, you can see him playing there more so.
Yeah.
Mark, can I ask you questions about what was missing? There was so much. One of the great things about the Peter Jackson movie is that you got a chance to see so much more of their development of the songs, and you see the relationship of the Beatles. Was there anything in particular during the course of the development of those songs that you really enjoyed, that you really enjoyed seeing about the Beatles?
In the Get Back version, is that
In the
what
Get
you're
Back
asking?
version, yes.
Well, the obvious one that everybody brings up, and I have to agree with them, is Paul creating Get Back out of nothing on the bass. It's just, it's an incredible moment, and it's one that we never expected to see. It is a little bit disappointing that neither version tells us how the Beatles arrived at the arrangements of these songs. Because the arrangements themselves are fully formed, and then they change them off screen. For instance, Two of Us. They bring in Two of Us. It's a fast version, which I love, even though I also love the calm version, the acoustic version of it. But I love that fast version of Two of Us. But somewhere along the line, they decided to change it. We never see that. And it's just that part of the creative process I really would have liked to see, but it's probable that there's just no footage about it. They probably did that out of the studio in their houses, but we don't know anything about that. And nobody has really followed up on that I'm aware of.
There's also a couple of hours of footage that Peter Jackson did not include, if I understand correctly. They released 6 hours, but they were supposedly looking at it to be 8 hours, and he
Well,
had
they
to cut it.
released 8. They
Yeah.
were supposed to
Oh.
release 6, and Peter Jackson snuck in another couple of hours. And
Oh,
Disney
okay, then I
Plus
got it
said,
wrong. Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
we'll put it on. And I'm so glad they did. But obviously, we would love to see more of it. But I've read through the book, the Sulpy book, Drugs, Divorce, and the
Yeah,
Slipping.
I have that book. Yeah.
And I don't remember even there a whole lot about the arrangements of the song. So it must have happened outside of either Twickenham or the Apple studio for the most. But even so, with Get Back, you do see, with the Peter Jackson Get Back, you do see them making some changes and putting those things together. And of course, in some of the bootleg audio that's come out over the years, Get Back, the song, is a perfect example of this. There are different versions of it that you hear. You don't hear Ringo's bum ba-da-dum ba-da-dum until much later, which they actually took from the Fast Two of Us version. When they abandoned it for Two of Us, they put that into Get Back, and that really makes the song cook.
Yeah.
Up until that point, Ringo was just doing a straight 4/4 beat. And Jan made the point earlier that Ringo is the glue that keeps them together. There's one rehearsal of Get Back that we hear. It's in neither film, but it's on one of the audio tapes where the take breaks down, but Ringo just does a drum fill and pulls them right back on with it. And it's just magnificent. I wish they had had footage of that and could have included it, but I suspect they just didn't want to have too many versions of Get Back in either of these movies.
Well, if
Yeah,
you
one
look
of-
at,
Sorry, Fred, go ahead.
if you look at the rooftop concert when they do the last version of Get Back, when the cops are telling them to get out, and Mal turns off the speaker, George and John's guitars go off, but Paul's bass is still on, and Ringo's, you can still hear his drums, and they're going going until George turns the speaker back on. So so you can see Paul and Ringo just kept it rolling until John and George were able to get back in.
Yeah.
Yep.
But one of the things that I really enjoyed about, I don't have the song in my head, but I might have been Get Back, where Paul and John are singing together, and John actually is taking on more of the lyric in Get Back as they develop it. If I remember correctly, if I got the right song in my head. And it was really actually rather fascinating because you always associate the song with Paul. And here is John singing it, and it was just quite a lot of fun. I may have the wrong song. I Got a Feeling. You may be doing the lead section of I Got a Feeling as opposed to doing the bridge. That's the one he might have been singing on, but it was just a lot of fun. I would have liked to have seen that added into the new Let It Be, or whatever it is, restored version of Let It Be. But the concert performance in the new version of Let It Be is absolutely fantastic. And it's the one thing that I missed out of the Peter Jackson film, because I thought in Peter Jackson's version, he kind of cut away to the street too much. And while, and I think he kind of went away from the performances as opposed to the rooftop, which was pretty much straight performance, even if it was edited for the film, for the sake of the film.
I'd like to challenge that just a little
Please.
bit, because in the Peter Jackson version, we get the entire rooftop concert, although they do still, over a couple of the songs, particularly I've Got a Feeling and One After 909, cut back to the street. And my guess is it's because they didn't have all the footage. But I'm hoping that's wrong, because someday I hope we get a complete rooftop concert.
Yeah.
Just the rooftop.
I mean,
But
you figure you have all those cameras, right? There must be,
But in
must
the
be a
Let It
version of
Be
the whole thing.
movie, In the Let It Be movie, you get 5 performances. You get
Yeah.
1 Get Back performance, you get 1 Don't Let Me Down. And by the way, the 3-part harmony on that version of Don't Let Me Down on the rooftop is just so gorgeous. I
Yeah.
don't know why Phil Spector didn't put that on the Let It Be album. It's really missing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they do I've Got a Feeling. They do
I like a pony, right?
sorry, one after 909, they do Dig a Pony, and then they redo Get Back, and that's the one that almost breaks down because the cops are there.
Right. Well, we got to remember also that the Beatles did put out a streaming version of the Get Back concert.
They do, but
which,
that's audio. That's from the tapes that Alan Parson was tape opping down in the
right,
basement, and those are pristine. And that thing
right,
that you're showing right now is worth its weight in gold. It's gorgeous.
right,
Yeah, play
right.
that
You
from
go-
Spotify. Yeah.
right. You can only stream it right now, but let's hope if they put Let It Be, the current Let It Be movie on DVD and Blu-ray, that maybe they'll include the audio of the complete rooftop concert. That would be very nice.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in Universal Music to greenlight that, but if they did, it would be just wonderful.
Oh yeah.
So let's make sure we hear from Jan, because I didn't want to take up all the time here.
Oh, that's okay. You know a lot more than I do. I'm learning a lot during this session. But I did want to say one thing about the street, the people on the street. I was thinking, wow, this is not 1964. There's nobody screaming, right? No girls really going bananas, tearing their hair out, nothing like that. It was like a mixed review of people down on the street. And one of the things I really loved was the very proper English gentleman with a coat and a hat and a pipe climbing up the ladder on the side of the building and walking across the roof. That was absolutely beautiful. I loved that.
Agreed.
But I did like seeing everybody. And then I'm thinking, well, it's like 5 years difference, right?
Yeah.
Beatlemania, like every girl, young guy was going absolutely, totally out of their minds, me included, for the Beatles. And here they are, up on the rooftop, a surprise concert,
Yeah.
And, and there the mixed reactions, like one gentleman saying, well, they're interfering with our business and stuff like that. And I thought, wow, how things change in 5 years' time. You don't even know what you are privy to,
I think
Well,
part
I
of that
some
is
people I think might have been certainly aware that this is Savile Row where the Beatles worked, and so they probably were familiar with them there. But to actually have them perform was definitely out of the box. I mean,
It was.
but they couldn't be seen. They were up on the roof, except for the people who climbed up, like the gentleman you referred to, Jim, which was great. And of course, you can see other spectators behind the Beatles in the Michael Lindsay Hogg film. So those people are just watching it, but the people on the street, they're just hearing this. And of course, there's a distance. You get a little bit of the echo for that. Although in this version of Let It Be, they dialed that echo down, and I appreciate that, because in the original theatrical cut, the echo just sounded terrible. And here, it's just a little bit of an effect to give you the idea that there's a distance there. And I think they did a very nice job with that.
Right. The thing we have to keep in perspective is that the whole original idea of Let It Be is that they were rehearsing for what was going to be a concert of brand new songs. And unfortunately, that whole process broke down with George leaving the group in the middle of the month of January. And they had to reconvene and they had to rethink the whole thing of the concert. And finally just said, let's just make this a documentary about making a Beatles album. And but Michael Lindsay Hogg said, well, the whole point was to get to a live performance. So that's when the idea of the rooftop concert came up. So we have to have an ending. So that was the ending.
Yeah. Well, also was amazing to me, and I guess to a lot of us fans, is that the White Album had only been released in November of 1968, and here we are, rather less than 2 months later, maybe about 2 months later, and here they're coming up with all these other new songs and rehearsing songs that would eventually be used for Abbey Road. And it's like they have a whole other album ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yes.
I think the idea of them doing a live concert featuring so much of this new material, I'm sure the audience, had they done a full concert, still would have been, over the moon over it.
They
Yeah,
would
But
have
it would have
gone
been like,
nuts.
I would have liked to have seen, play some of the older stuff, and not even old stuff, but by then, but play White Album stuff, play Day Tripper, play some of the old songs if you can, throw
Yeah,
in
somebody
know?
has said that's what they should have done. They should have done a concert of new stuff, which would put like some of the older Beatles stuff, then the White Album stuff, and then insert these new songs in there.
Yeah.
And the Rolling Stones sort of did that with the Rolling Stone Circus, also also filmed by Michael Lindsay Hogg, in which they do new songs from Beggar's Banquet and all. And John Lennon is in that, is in the Rock and Roll
he is,
Circus with
Part of the
Keith
Dirty
Richards,
Mac.
the Dirty Mac doing Your Blues. So
he does
there
use
you
those,
have what Let It Be could have been if they had stuck with the concert concept.
Yeah, except the Rock and Roll Circus wound up getting stuffed in a mattress for 30 years and didn't come out until the late 90s.
I know. Thank you, Alan Klein.
I'm going to go back a bit. Let's go back to 1964 for a minute.
Yay.
And as Jan mentioned, the way people reacted towards the Beatles is so much different. And Jen, I'm going to ask you to take it away and talk a little bit about your book, My Ticket to Ride, which was her experience when the Beatles played in Cleveland back in February, is it February of 64?
The first time they played in Cleveland was September 15th, 1964 at the Public Auditorium.
Right.
But I can go back to when I first heard them on the radio was December 26, 1963. That was when, during that time, we were listening to Dominique. That was #1 on the charts. And, those
the
kind
Flying
of
Nun.
tunes, the flying,
No,
the
singing
nun.
Singing nun.
Very sweet. She was
Sister
playing
Celia.
Dominique in French on an acoustic guitar, right? And of course, I'm going to Catholic high school. All the nuns, they're just over the moon. One of their own, has made it. But the music that was happening then, we didn't know anything else.
Yeah.
We knew we hated Lawrence Welk, that was for sure.
Oh.
I watched him in the 70s. I enjoyed Lawrence Welk.
Yeah, he
I
was
love
okay.
all kinds of music, though.
Yeah. Well, you had the Lennon sisters, and all that. So anyway, kids like me, I was 15 at the time. We were just ready for something. We didn't know it. And there was a new disc jockey that was coming from Chicago. And in those days, disc jockeys could choose whatever songs they wanted to play on the radio. So we're hoping maybe this new guy from Chicago, the big city, is going to come to Cleveland and bring some new records. Jerry G was his name. What did he bring? The Beatles. I Want to Hold Your Hand, right? I'm in the kitchen with my big transistor radio, and I hear the song, and I jump up, and I pick up the radio, and I hold it next to my ear because I can't hear it enough. That sound, oh my gosh, that harmony, those voices just washed right over me. It took over me from that moment on, and that was Beatlemania at the very beginning, like I was right there at the first steps of Beatlemania. And then, of course, that led to me and my friend. All we knew were the Beatles. You couldn't get enough bubblegum cards, everything. The only way we could find out about them, because of course there was no internet or anything back then. You had a TV, you had a radio, and you had a telephone, and that was it. So buy record albums, at the record store, and then you could read about the Beatles on the back of the album. and Beatle magazines were really big. Win a phone call with the Beatle, how to dance the Beatle, or to get your own Beatle wig, and things like that. And we just went bananas. And then, of course, we heard they were going to be on Ed Sullivan February 9th. Couldn't believe that we were going to see the Beatles right in our own living rooms. So I decided that I wanted to go and live in Beatle land.
Mark, you want to ask you a question before Jay goes further?
I was just going to say, I tried to get a Beatle wig after having seen the Beatles on the Sullivan Show. And in Timonium, Maryland, where I grew up, you could not find a Beatle wig. What I did find was an orange, thin paper little magazine, maybe about 12 pages, that had lyrics to some of their songs, except none of these songs were recognizable, because it turns out these songs were from the Please Please Me album and not from Meet the Beatles. So
Yeah.
we'd never heard of Chains and Boys at that point. I'd never seen Introducing the Beatles at that point, the VJ album.
Yeah, I
So-
have that album still. It's actually my favorite album because I love the mono version.
Yeah, I didn't get that until about 72 or 3 or 4, something around
That's
there.
beautiful. I love that album. So pure,
Yeah.
right?
Right, exactly. Oh, can I just interject
Yeah,
something? There was a Beatle
sure.
event. There was a Beatle event today on YouTube where they on the official Beatles YouTube channel, they premiered a new video cut, music video of the Let It Be song with alternate shots that were filmed
cool.
during the same time.
Yeah.
So go on YouTube, go on the official Beatles YouTube page and look up the new Let It Be music video. You're gonna love it.
I have
Cool.
one complaint about it, though.
Oh,
They used the Phil Spector produced version of the song,
Ah,
which doesn't match the clips properly.
Oh,
oh wow.
However, the alternate views are great.
Yeah, exactly.
well,
So-
let me just ask Jan to finish up. Before she goes, she continues. She had written this book called My Ticket to Ride. It's still very much available. Should be out there. Look for it in your store. And it tells about her story, about her and her friend running away to England to meet
Yep.
the Beatles.
yeah.
And
And done all legally. We had passports, one-way TWA tickets, and the morning after the Beatles concert, which, by the way, in those days, a concert was only 30 minutes long, and it was a 12-set concert. That was it, very short. And in Cleveland, because the show had to be shut down because all these girls rushed the stage, and the show was shut down for 10 minutes. So therefore, it was 40 minutes. 10 minutes of getting the girls back into their chairs. So anyway, that instead of going to school the morning after and without telling anybody, we took a taxi to Cleveland Hopkins Airport, flew to JFK, and from JFK to London. And from there, we wound up renting a little studio flat. Now, we were only 16, right? And the plan was, because I had read in one of the Beatles magazines that the Beatles hung out in Soho. And I said to my friend, how do they put that in this magazine? Now everybody knows where they go. I don't understand it, So we would go down like almost every night to the clubs. This is what the British invasion was being formed right there. And we were right there. The Stones had been the house band 2 weeks before we arrived, replaced by the Kinks as the house band. So we managed to stay there for 23 days. We didn't know anybody was looking for us because we didn't have a television, we didn't read boring newspapers, and we didn't have a radio in our studio flat. And plus, what did we need that for? We were living the life, that we would have been reading about. Now we're actually doing it.
Yeah.
So little did we know that Cleveland Heights Police Department and the State Department had requested that Scotland Yard find us, and because they wanted us back, So it was in the newspaper like every day, hunt on, for these girls. And in fact, in my book, I have
A mugshot.
2 pages of headlines, newspaper headlines.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Runaway Beatle fans are lost by English police. Girls lost on Beatle hunt. The Beatles were invited to search for us as well. And when I was doing research on my book, I came across some newspaper articles in newspapers in England that told me something I never knew. That was that Brian Epstein called the U.S. Embassy while we were there getting ready to be returned to United States. Paul wanted to come and say hello and goodbye to us.
Oh dear.
But the United Nations said no. And they never told us, right? Maybe it's a good thing they didn't tell us while we were there. I probably would have lost my mind. For all the years, I started writing my book in 2016.
Yeah.
And 2017, that was when I found this out. And I was just as devastated when I read that in 2017 as I would have been in 1964.
That's amazing.
So like Paul always has my heart because he was the one of the Beatles that he was going to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think
Did
you
you
guys,
ever hear-
I think everybody out there that loves the Beatles and was particularly interested in that period of time, that Beatlemania time, go out and get this book, My Ticket to Ride by Jan Mitchell. Go to Amazon, go to whatever online bookseller you want or a regular bookstore. It's a great, great story, and she tells it so well and so enthusiastically as you have just seen displayed. Thank you, Jan, for that.
Thank you, Ed, so much. I appreciate it.
It really has been a lot of fun talking with the three of you tonight, and I'm gonna just ask each of you to just share a little bit about where people can find you online, and if they want to send you emails or Facebook messages or whatever to further discuss this or any other related type matter. Fred, you want to start us off?
Sure. You could get in touch with me. I'm on Facebook, so just look me up on Facebook, and I'm on X as well. And I've written
Rotten.
to Broughton to two Monkeys books. My first one, A Little Bit Me, A Little Bit You, The Monkeys from a Fan's Perspective, and A Little Bit Me, A Little Bit You 2, The Monkeys from International Fans' Perspectives. And you could, if you want to get the books, they're on Amazon, both print and Kindle. And you could also reach me on my website, Freddy Pop, that's one word, FreddyPop.wordpress.com. You could order autographed copies of the books from there, or go on Amazon and order the books from there as well. And again, I'm on Facebook and on X, so you can reach me there as well. And just want to briefly show my little Let It Be stuff. The original Let It Be album from 1970 with the, let me get it out there, with the red Apple label.
Oh,
Wow.
Red Apple label.
nice.
And of course, the recent Let It Be box set with a lot of groovy stuff in it.
Cool. And Fred, also on Facebook, you also run at least one Monkeys Facebook group, right?
Yes, I
You want
do.
to share that about that?
Yes, I have. There's actually two that I'm on. Monkeys fan book. You can look that up, and you could, if you want to be a member, you're more than welcome to join up. And also, I have a page dedicated to the three monkeys that unfortunately are no longer with us.
Oh,
It's Davy Jones, Peter Tork, and Michael Nesmith. Remembrance page. So just look that up. If you go on my Facebook page, you should be able to find a link to the Davy Jones, Peter Tork, and Michael Nesmith remembrance page. And God bless Mickey Dolenz. I hope he's with us for as long as possible.
I hope so
You
too.
know, he's on tour this year, so if you guys haven't seen Mickey yet, go see him. He does an
He's
incredible
fantastic. He does a great
And-
show.
And 7A Records, which have put out these great solo Monkeys materials, is about to release the Davy Jones Incredible album, his 1987
Yes.
solo album, and it's coming out with great new sound, remastered, lots of great photos, and several bonus cuts. So
I'm looking forward to that too.
I'm looking forward to it as well.
All right.
So a shout out to our friend Glenn Gretlin of 7A Records. A lot of success with the new Davy Jones album.
Right on.
All right.
Mark, could you share with us how people can reach out to you?
Yeah, I don't do a whole lot of social media. I kind of do the asocial media thing, but I am on Facebook, so you can look me up there. I will not promise to friend you, but you can. Look me up there.
Well, Mark, I really appreciate you being on with us tonight. And Jan, could you share where we can reach out to you and where we
Well-
can find your book and so forth?
Yeah, well, my book is it's always on Amazon, print, Kindle, Audible, and there's a CD version as well. That's all
Ooh.
on Amazon. Yeah, pretty cool. And then I have
Nice.
a website, janice-mitchell.com. And then I'm on Facebook, Jan Mitchell, and also a link to my book page, which I'm hardly ever on that one, but I am on Jan Mitchell a lot. So you can reach me there. You can send me a message on janice-mitchell.com. You can find my book, like I said, on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target online, like just about anywhere, really.
Fantastic. And it is a great book. So I
Thank you.
strongly recommend it. I've had a blast reading it over
Thanks.
the last couple of years, and I refer to it now and again. So again, thanks, Jan.
Well,
This is
listen, I
Ed's.
hope I'm not influencing anybody to run away to England, without telling anyone.
Oh, these crazy kids these
Oh,
days.
they do.
Books are good. Parading's better.
So anyway, this is Ed's Pop-O-Matic podcast. My name is Ed Rising, and you can find me on Facebook. You can find my YouTube page. If you go to YouTube, look up Ed Rising or Ed Rising Pop-O-Matic podcast. You can find the videos for that we've done over the last couple of years. And let's see, I'm on Facebook, so you can check that out. Look, I want to thank everybody for being on the show today and everybody listening and watching. This is Ed's Pop-O-Matic podcast, a retro pop culture podcast where everything retro beats the new if you keep it in your heart, and we keep beating on. So thank you, everyone, and have a very good night.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everybody.
Ed.